Hello, welcome back to another interview. My name is Jenna Blair Soroka. I'm a licensed health and nutrition counselor and mindset specialist. I help people nurture a more positive and self-loving relationship with food and their bodies by using a weight neutral approach and focusing on cultivating habits and behavior changes that allow you to go from the relentless pursuit of the thin ideal and food obsession to exploring reasons behind self-sabotage and embracing your imperfections. It's time to reclaim your health and wellness through the power of curiosity, compassion, and courage, and to find worth beyond measurement. Today, we have Renee Little. I feel like there was like, ba, ba, ba. Dramatic, yeah. I'm really excited for you to be here. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. I'm really excited to continue our conversation because I had interviewed you not too long ago. So yeah, this is great.
It's nice. I love this like collaborative experience in the health and wellness space between people, especially in the field you're in with health at every size and intuitive eating, which we'll get into as we go through through the interview. To start things off though, I'd love to, or for you to kind of introduce yourself and explain what your relationship with food and your body looked like growing up for you.
Sounds good. So my name's Renee Little, as Jenna said, and I'm a registered dietitian. I've been a dietitian for a while now, like since 2004. So it's quite a long time. And my journey into kind of the intuitive eating and health at every size space is fairly recent. So it's in the last, I would say 4 years now. And so it's a fairly new practice to me. So even though I've been practicing for a long time, it's just took kind of a left turn into the health at every size and changed my practice entirely. So it still feels really new sometimes to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like just hearing when people decide to kind of shift towards a health at every size, it's kind of when you get into the research, you can't unlearn that stuff. And then you just have to flip everything on its head and just go for it.
Completely. Yeah. And that is what happened to me. I had actually, before we get into kind of stuff in my childhood and what that looked like, before I had gotten into health at every size, I had actually been predominantly in weight loss, focused counseling, in private practice, and then chronic disease management. And in the healthcare system, as we probably all recognize, there is a lot of weight loss focus on some of the things the cardiac diets or even diabetes diets, reflux diets, like the diet handouts and philosophy. And so it was quite weight-centric. And then when I found health at every size and intuitive eating, it was just we're doing it all wrong. It was kind of my approach initially. We really need to look at weight stigma and weight inclusivity and how we're making an impact on people with even just the words and language we're using in handouts and what research we're using. So yeah, we can't unlearn it once we see it. And it just really changed my whole practice in life. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy transition, but it definitely for me, and it I can tell for you, it just feels so much more aligned.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it was aligned in my own body too. I had gone through, some dieting behavior in the past. And it was just I don't want to do that anymore. It's not serving me, and why. And once I got into intuitive eating, I really understood why it wasn't serving me and what was going on. And eating in a more aligned way with intuitive eating just felt very normal, natural. I finally got to kind of eat according to just what my body needed instead of questioning it all the time. And it felt more connected eating and more grounded. So it was just very, very good for me personally. So that's why I kind of went into it in the first place.
Yeah. Amazing. I love that. And I think for a lot of people, it does stem from that personal experience where there is a disconnect between food in our bodies, and our relationship with food it's never perfect, yet, when we can recognize that something isn't working and then we find intuitive eating, it's out there. It's amazing. And so I'd love for you maybe to speak a little more into intuitive eating itself and give people watching a greater understanding of what it is beyond, oh, I just eat according to hunger. I just eat when I stop when I'm full. And I think that's a very basic component of it, right?
Definitely. Yeah. Do you want me to go back and talk a little bit about like my relationship with food when I was younger too?
Yeah, just tie that. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you could tie it in, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Sure. Sounds good. So when I was like quite a bit younger, my relationship with food was really good. So like into my like, I can think of like early years of like kind of like 8, 9, 10, whatever. I had a great relationship with food. There was no issues. It wasn't until I was 16 that things started coming up for me. And I was trying to reflect back because I was looking at your questions and trying to reflect back on this a bit, even this weekend and last week. And there was some sort of thing that happened around 16 where I started to pay attention to what I was eating and started to pay attention to my body. And I remember at the time, my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, when I was 16, we were dating then, yeah, a long time ago. He had mentioned at a lunchtime, he's like, well, is that all you have for lunch? Like a salad isn't lunch. And I was like, I reflected back on that and went, he noticed at that time that things were kind of like not what he would appear as obviously what he would think was a full lunch. And then what happened, which was really interesting, was I got into the restriction binge cycle even then. And I had no idea then like what that even was or that there was a connection, but I wouldn't eat enough during the day. And then at night, I would eat a large volume of food like after school when I went home because I was so hungry, obviously. And I teach my clients about this all the time because physiologically it makes sense. This is like protecting yourself and your body from, starvation mode in having this large volume of food or what might be considered like a binge. And we see binging sometimes in such a bad light. But in that moment, it was so positive for me because like as a teenager needing so many calories, I needed that food and my body was like, you need that food, you need to eat that. And so it was like a protective mechanism. So it was really interesting. And that kind of like down the road through my 20s, it was very similar, kind of like food restriction and binging, and just like not really acknowledging or recognizing what was going on until later in my life in like my 30s when I was finally figured things out. It was like when I found intuitive eating, it was like, oh, that's what's been going on like in my life. And no one had pointed it out. No one had recognized it as problematic. Because when I was eating with other people, I was eating what would look like a normal portion or a typical portion. It was only really when I was like sometimes at work or at home, and definitely not having it be like this global behavior. So I feel like if someone is in that mindset and they are doing that behavior, it's good for them to also realize and understand maybe what's going on, that they might not realize it. So that's why I wanted to share that little bit of my kind of like story and history, because yeah, it's really important to see that connection and that might be going on for them.
Yeah, I find it so interesting how the transition between behaviors that are more disordered, just using that word, disordered,
Sure. Yeah.
and then transitioning where you can start to see how those behaviors aren't serving you anymore. It depends on the person, of course, but there's a period where we're doing those things and we have no idea, like you said, and it always like, once the curtains were peeled back for me, it's like I can never unsee that. But to get to that point, it can be so challenging, and there's a lot of like defensiveness that goes on because you mentioned earlier, like these are protection mechanisms for us physiologically, but also psychologically. There's all that ties into it. So you mentioned there was that point where you kind of realized where, okay, something's not serving me anymore. Was there any one in particular, or was it the slow, like people just kind of mentioning you were learning something that evolved into this awakening for you?
Yeah, honestly, it was like over time. So the one thing that I really reflect back on, and it speaks to the diet culture in the world, is that no one pointed out, other than my boyfriend at the time, my husband now, that my eating patterns and selection of foods was maybe problematic. and wasn't serving me in terms of like energetically. And no one had ever said that in my entire life, and noticed that, which was really interesting. So it was very much a self journey of recognizing it myself and seeing the patterns. And, even like with my like sports. So when I got more into sports, which was later in my teens and then throughout my life now, I started to see the pattern of like, okay, if I don't eat enough, then obviously I'm not going to recover well, and then I'm not going to have gains in sport. But there was then that piece, of course, with diet culture of, well, if I eat too much, then my weight will go up. And then there's this battle, right? So although I knew internally, especially as a dietitian, I need to eat to recover, there was then this other battle going on psychologically with the diet culture aspect. And that was like later in life, in my like 20s. So not in my like teens, when this sort of restrictive behavior came up, which had nothing to do with my weight at the time, as far as I recognize.
Right.
Probably did, but diet culture has that sneaky influence.
Mm-hmm.
But later in life, it definitely did. And so there was then that constant battle there. And so it was like, I thought I was doing a good thing by eating the way I was eating, because I got so many compliments on my body shape and size and how strong I was and all those things. But then those people, obviously, they don't see the other aspect of it, which is like inside, you're just like having that internal battle of like, well, I want to nourish myself, but I want to look a certain way too. And so then that takes you away from like your true self and your true like needs and self-care, in terms of that diet culture messaging. So it really was an evolution, like learning more about myself, learning more about mindfulness, getting more connected to myself and what I needed, and further away from like that diet culture mentality.
Yeah.
And then intuitive eating just like flipped the switch, to be honest. Like I was like, I needed this like 10 years ago, not now. Like I need it now, but I also needed it like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there was a lot of reconciling you had to do. And I'm sure even today, like it's this lifelong healing process in my mind. And like you said, intuitive eating flipped the switch. You were kind of preparing yourself for that moment almost to see this other way of nourishing yourself. And they were like, yes, I'm ready for this. It's happening.
Absolutely. It was way past time. And I had definitely had a more gentle approach to my body and nutrition in the last like 5 years. I think when you get into your 30s, things maybe start to shift a bit. Priorities and values change, and I wasn't as focused on it as I had been in my 20s, but still needed that coaching, that support, that like evidence, the science behind it to really understand my body and what was going on, and to see diet culture for what it was, that it wasn't helping me. It was influencing me in a negative way and really hindering my life, in a big way. Yeah. So getting into your second question about like what intuitive eating is and like why I love it so much, what it did for me. So intuitive eating, if people don't know that are watching, it's a 10 principle philosophy, and it was created by Evelyn Tribole and Elsie Reich. And there are two dietitians that work in the eating disorder field, and they had seen clients for years and years, and then created intuitive eating principles based on their own experience with clients, their clients' experience, and then all of the research on intuitive eating that they have worked with. So what it is it's not just guided by like, eating guided by hunger and fullness, but it's understanding the influence of diet culture. That is so huge. And that it basically like hinders your ability to actually listen to yourself and guide yourself to eating based on your cues. The other part of it is the satisfaction. So actually enjoying your food that you're eating and not having dieting foods like, salads with like nothing on them that are really boring and thinking that that's lunch, but having like avocado and nuts and salad dressing and, some kind of protein, the whole gamut of making that food really satisfying. Also respecting your body, taking care of it, even if you don't love every part of it. Because obviously loving every aspect of yourself in this diet culture ridden world that we live in can be really challenging sometimes, or all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guiding, like respecting your body, taking care of it, which means just like sleeping well, giving it water, giving it enough food, mindfully moving it, not necessarily going to like hours and hours of exercise classes, but like going for a walk if that feels good, or doing like a short yoga session if that feels good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of overarching the sort of the philosophy behind it.
That was a nice breakdown, and it gives people a sense of how encompassing intuitive eating really is beyond, like I mentioned earlier, just hunger and fullness. And you mentioned breaking down diet culture is such a critical component of this, because I think, you mentioned in your journey and even in my journey, when we have these blinders on, like when we're unaware of us being influenced in a negative fashion,
Yeah.
we're going to think that, oh, we're behaving in a helpful way. And peeling back those curtains, as I said before, is just really powerful. And then it's almost empowering to be like, hey, it's not my fault that I've been acting like this. It's diet culture's influence, and I'm really going to reclaim my health and redefine it that in a way that works for me, not based on all these outside expectations of who I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
Which is
Absolutely. Yes, it is. It's so great. Yeah, I think I had for so long too, while I was learning about this, I felt like I had such a personal responsibility too, that like, why as a dietitian couldn't I have seen this? And, I felt so much sadness about working with clients, even with like on weight loss goals specifically, because I was like, oh, I was basically feel now like I was definitely contributing to that diet culture messaging for them. But the more and more kind of like reconciliation, like you said, I do, it's like, I didn't know, and I didn't see that. I was in diet culture just like they were, just like so many people were, and it wasn't my fault. And it's not other people's fault if they are, going to diet after diet after diet, thinking that that's the right choice for them. Because again, it's like, that's the message that we're getting. And so it just takes that like snap of a like, whoa, there's something else I can explore. There's another way. There's other information that's telling me I don't need to focus on weight loss and like my body being a certain size. And it takes that time and that moment to be like, okay, thank you for this information. I'm going to go with this, and I'm going to shift and change things. Yeah. So it's just not our fault when we're immersed in this.
Yeah, I love that. Taking the pressure off of ourselves, that like, or the blame off of ourselves that we did something wrong, we've made this horrible sin. It's like, no, this is the messages we're receiving. It's totally understandable that these are the patterns that we've adopted in our lives.
Completely. Yeah. And so then we can be the guides now that we're, seeing the other side to help people to do the same thing. And I feel like that's what intuitive eating is too. For me, and why I did the certification. It's like, okay, this gave me so much. Now I want to bring other people along to have more peace with food and more peace with their body.
Yeah, guide them through the mess that is diet culture, because you've been there and you're like, I see the light. The light is there. I can walk you through.
Exactly.
Okay, so again, I encourage people to rewind and watch that because, and take some notes, because I love bringing on guests who just have so much wisdom and knowledge in this area, because you hear like they've been through their own journeys and are there to guide you through the messiness. And that kind of, I want to shift now into more body image talk, because I know that you just completed a course and it had to do with body image and helping your clients navigate that side of not intuitive eating, because that's a component, like you said, body respect too.
Yeah, well, what I was, the reason why I took the course, and it's from two dietitians who specialize in eating disorders and body healing, body image healing, was because when I was working with my clients and we were getting into intuitive eating, it's like, okay, we need to get you to understand your hunger cues. So here's some explorations, and then let's make sure you can trust your hunger. But when they were going to trust their hunger, they were coming up against a block. And that block was saying, my body's not good enough if I gain weight. And if they had gained weight, they were also struggling with that weight gain because of the diet culture mentality of like that we need to be smaller or we need to be a certain size. And so they were coming up against all these blocks. And I was like, well, I need to figure out how to help them through these blocks, because if that's a block that multiple people are coming through against, obviously, it's pretty common. So I need to figure out how to help them. So when I took this course, it helped. Again, you do your own work and then you can help others. So I also did a lot of my own work in the body image area. And for me, that involved hiring a psychologist that was specializing in body image, because I needed to work through some of my own stuff with CBT. And it was very, very helpful. And so that was my journey. And then I can now that I've been there, can help, again, other people through that journey. So the body image course, it covered like extensively of like where body image comes from, like what is it and how do we shift it? And one of the things that was so powerful that helped me was that body image that's negative is not the opposite, or positive is not the opposite of negative body image. So that's so confusing to think about, I know, because we always think in terms of like those being oppositional, negative and positive. But if we think of it in this way, is that if we just did nothing, because of a lot of times the diet culture messaging that we're in, our default can be negative body image. So it's just there, it's just how we're existing because of all these messages, and we're not feeling like our body is enough. So if we just did nothing, then we wouldn't necessarily have a positive body image. So we have to actually take active steps in order to create a positive body image. And some of those active steps are not just the negative aspect of like, oh, I'm not enjoying my body right now, I don't like it, or I'm looking at certain aspects of it. So the opposite of that would be, okay, well, don't look at your stomach, because when you look at your stomach, you don't like it. And that doesn't work. That's not how you create positive body image. Yeah. So it's not the opposite. What it is thinking about other things you can do actively to create that positive body image for yourself. So one of the things that looks like is in intuitive eating. They do talk in the book about body respect. So if you think about body respect, what that is again, like feeding your body properly, like 3 times a day, maybe snacks, giving it movement. So connecting with it and thinking about like, what are my signals that my body needs to move? What are my signals that my body's giving me that I need to rest? Instead of thinking I need to move because I should, because the message is, I need to move an hour a day or whatever the message is that you're getting. So it's connecting to your body. And when you can connect to it and actually give it what it needs, obviously that also helps you to create more positive body image, because then you're giving your body at least the baseline of the basics of what it needs, even if you're not loving every aspect of it. So that's one component of it. So that's how people can start very simply, is like, can you do the basics even if you don't love your body?
Right.
Can you still care for it in a way that's loving and feels good and kind to it? Yeah. So that's one thing. The second thing they can do is thinking about one of the things that are a huge trigger for my clients and myself as well, I've experienced this, is every day we have to wear clothes. Every day, unless we live on like a nudist colony or something like that, or go on a vacation, we have to put on clothes. So if your clothes don't fit, or if you don't like them, you don't feel that they look good on you, or they just don't fit you, that's every morning a triggering aspect that could make you feel as though you're not feeling comfortable in your body as it is today. So buying clothes that fit you, that are comfortable, and that you enjoy wearing is actually really important. And that seems so silly, like on a superficial level to some of us, that we're like, oh, this body image work, it's deep, I have to go deep down in there. But these things really matter too. And they do actually contribute overall to your body image.
I think that the second tip you were giving, or strategy you were giving, is so important, yet it's so complex for some people, especially those in larger bodies, because then we have the topics around weight stigma and fat phobia, and how the like fashion industry isn't creating clothes necessarily that's going to make people feel good. And I know I've had clients where they are very resistant to getting rid of those smaller clothes, because that's almost what they're attached to. Like if I give in almost and get bigger clothes, then I am giving up. So I would love to hear kind of your thoughts around those sort of comments and how people can work through that, because it's not giving up, but it's hard to express that to the client.
Yeah, so I definitely have that conversation a lot, because there is that, like holding on and connection to those clothes of that was a previous body that you want to get back into. And so we have the conversation about why, they want to get back into that body. And something to think about for people that are listening, is you can think about that yourself. So what would you think that smaller body will give you that this body right now won't? And there may or may not be truth in that. And so you can explore each of those areas of that you think, that smaller body could give you that you're holding on to. And there may be like, you could have those things right now in your now body. You just don't realize it. It's more of a mental block. There's some things that you might have to grieve a bit, that you have to let go of, that you may not be able to have in all body sizes, that might be more difficult. Like, as an example, chair sizes sometimes they're not accessible for everyone. And so you have to be a bit more cautious when you go places if you're not fitting in standard chairs, of like calling ahead and seeing if making sure that there's chairs that fit you, and making sure that you're going to places that you're going to feel comfortable and have that accessibility. So it takes more work. So then it's the grieving process, accepting grieving, and just being supported in some of those things too, by your community and by your health professionals, your family, your friends. So it's a conversation of, what does that mean to you? What is it really, really meaning as to why you're holding on to it? And how, can we support you now in the body you're in any aspect of your life, basically.
Yeah. Okay, that's super helpful, and I think that's going to be really beneficial for those who are watching as well. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Did you, because I interrupted you kind of, I don't know if you had
okay.
if you had a third strategy that you were wanting to share around body image. Was there, or was it the two that you were going for?
I think the two are kind of like good, at least to start with, for people. There is a lot of other things. Obviously, I have like a handout with about 6 pages or 7 or 8 pages of things to do. But some of those are more personal, and they have to be, discussed a little bit more in detail because they're nuanced, that kind of thing. And body image work is so personal. And so I think those are two of the things that at least you could start to do and start to shift your mindset on, in thinking about how can I take care of my now body in a way that's respectful and that's kind, and that's generating a bit of that self-compassion. And self-compassion is also part of body image shifting. And what that means is seeing your kind of like some of your struggles as not just uniquely yours, but also seeing them in the collective. And like, knowing, even us sharing some of our history of like with battles with the diet culture, it makes me feel also more compassionate towards myself, because we have shared that experience together as well as humans collectively in the universe.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are I think the two things that they could focus on initially.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree too. Like, you don't want to just like throw the kitchen sink at them and be like, have at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. It takes a bit of guidance and support.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so that sounds like it was an incredible course you took. It sounds like you gained a lot of knowledge, and that's so exciting for your clients to have you as that guiding support system to walk them through that. Very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so this was a great conversation. we could keep talking. I always say this with all my guests, like we could keep talking because this stuff is just so like we're passionate about it. And it's so fun to talk about, and it's really important in my mind. However, we need to end at some point. So
Exactly.
I'd love to do some wrap-up questions that are more, some of them are more fun and some of them are just reflective. So are you ready for it?
Yep.
Okay, number one, this is a fun one, is are you the type of person who leaves the dishes in the sink? or you like have to do them right away and get them out of there?
So it's kind of a funny question. And I heard you ask this to another guest and I was like, that's hilarious. And so I actually have shifted over time. So funny. So I used to have such perfectionist tendencies, and I definitely have seen those. And like with meditation and yoga, I've actually like really have shifted and changed like my just energy levels throughout my day. And now sometimes I leave dishes in the sink overnight. And I do them in the morning. And that never would have happened in the past. Just super interesting to see the shift of like, okay, you know, they're there, they're not hurting anything, it's fine. I'll have more time in the morning, and I'd rather go for a bike ride or watch the show or like do something fun tonight.
Yeah, it's like it's not the end of the world. I have dishes in my sink right now, and I've definitely shifted like you from that very perfectionist tendency of like gotta do them right away to okay, they're in the sink, I have more important things to do right now, and it's almost liberating sometimes.
It is. I agree 100%. It's nice just to be like, well, they're there, whatever, they'll get done eventually.
Yeah, not gonna lie, it does give me anxiety sometimes, but it's like good practice for just like letting go, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes my husband will do them, so
and
I won't have to do them at all.
It's like a battle, like who like leave them and then he's gonna do them.
Exactly. Win for me.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, I love that question. I love asking people that question because it's just very, just says a lot about the person, right? You just get to know somebody. Okay, next question is, if you could travel back in time and tell your younger self one lesson that you've learned over the years, what would it be?
I would definitely say like diet culture, like it exists, like realize what it is and you don't need it. Like you can subscribe to, you know, who you are as an individual yourself, you know who you are, and you don't need someone else to tell you how to be and how to exist in the world.
I need to like get all of the lessons that the guest speakers are saying on like a wall or something. It's so good, and it's just great. Yeah.
I would love it.
And the final question is, what quote is speaking to you right now in this moment?
Yes. So it was one from Evelyn Tribole, and I'll just say it out. So it's, diet culture diminishes our quality of life in many ways, and decreased satisfaction in eating is one of them. Eating foods you enjoy and that feels good is a way to connect with your body more deeply. Satisfaction is a pleasure-based principle and the hub of intuitive eating. And I just love that. I definitely do so much work of bringing the satisfaction of food back with my clients after years of like eating the cardboard diet food. And it's just really fun to add flavor and add satisfaction and joy to meals again.
Yeah, it's a whole new world when you're like, oh my gosh, things can taste good. What?
Yeah. Exactly. I can use oil to cook. I don't have to use like water. Yes, and things taste so much better.
Yeah. Oh, I resonate with that oil thing very much so. So awesome. Oh, thanks for sharing that. And then it's giving like an insight into intuitive eating, and maybe people might want to pick up the book and, you know, check it out.
Yep, give it a roll. The fourth edition just came out, so I actually haven't read it yet because I had to give it to a client. Nice.
I have it. I got the fourth edition, and it's been awesome. But yeah, definitely, that's gonna be passing that around a little bit, you know, and getting people interested.
Yeah, I had it ordered since like December, and it came in June, and then I had a client start and I couldn't get it again because it was back ordered, so I had to give it away. So I'm waiting for mine. It's coming in August.
Yeah. It will come. Okay, well, again, this was a lovely conversation. Thanks so much for continuing the conversation from our other interview. And where can people find you, learn more about you, and possibly work with you?
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm on Instagram primarily at the ambitious RD, and there's like dots in there. So the dot ambitious dot RD. I'm also on Facebook, same thing, the ambitious RD. And I have a Facebook group that's private that I've been going live in about twice a week and just sharing like intuitive eating tips. So if anyone wants to join that, they can just message me on Instagram and then I can send them the link for that as well.
Okay, awesome. And I'll put all that in the description of the video. And I just want to talk about or point out for the people watching Facebook groups. Like, I think they're underrated because so many people are doing them, but like if you really look at what you're getting from that for free, you're getting support from a registered dietitian. And I just want to really emphasize that, because to get the support from you would be incredible. So if
Thanks.
you're thinking about getting support without making that investment yet to see if Renee is the right fit for you, that could be a really great entryway.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. If you want to join my group, that would be great. Well, thanks, Jenna. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I appreciate you for being here. And so make sure, if you're watching right now, if you want to get on my mailing list to be the first to know about interviews like this, go to the description of this video for a link. And you can also get resources to help you nurture your body through curiosity, compassion, and courage, so you too can find worth beyond measurement. I'd love to hear what your biggest takeaway was from this interview. I'm sure Renee would love to hear as well. Whether you comment below or reach out to us on Instagram, email, whatever, we'd love to hear from you. Have an amazing rest of your day. Bye.